Tonight we're going to talk about recovery breathing. This is an important subject, and it's all about making sure you make the most of your time when you first come up after a dive. This is important for freedivers, of course, because freedivers notoriously, while in competition, will push themselves to their absolute maximum, and they need to be able to bring themselves back from that to any hypoxia they may be feeling, back to normalness enough to do the surface protocol. However, this is also worthwhile to know as a spearfisher. One, because mild use of this improves your recovery time, but also if you ever got caught in maybe an entanglement, or you overstayed your time on the bottom, doing recovery breaths will hold back the hypoxia incident, will put SAMBAs or blackouts that little bit further away if you do them well. Okay, now we're going to look at a type of breathing called hook breathing. But I'm going to change the terminology here, because hook breathing was what was called when it was used by pilots some time ago. Back in when they were doing dive bombs, and they were coming out of their dive bombs and going up. And what would occur in this time, the pilot would be diving down, and he would round the end of the bomb, drop his bomb, and then come out at a hell of a rate. And while he was going back up, the blood from his body drained out of his head, and they were notoriously would black out. Many of them would come round when they were another 1,000 feet higher, and not so much under pressure. However, it was a blood pressure situation. And while this has something to do with recovering and freediving, as we'll look at shortly, the hook breath, while it was adapted to freediving, is we're looking more at handling the oxygen exchange, immediate oxygen exchange when a person comes up from a dive. And that's what we're looking at. We want that oxygen in as fast as possible. And we are using pressure to speed that along. So we're looking at two things here. One is an increase in blood pressure used by this type of breathing, and the second one is using pressure to speed up or increase the oxygen exchange in the lungs. So it's called hook breathing because when it was done, or when it was taught in those days, it was done to look like this. Hook, hook. They were doing this throat hook type of thing. Okay? Now, as it's been adjusted in our freediving world, it's not so much done with this loud hook sound, and quite often people do it against the closed lips, looking more like that. So it's no longer really hook breathing. However, I've coined a term just because it was what we actually do is we compress the air. So I'm calling it compression breaths. So that doesn't mean you have to make a big sound or anything like that, but you do have to pressurize the air in your lungs. Okay, now back in Sydney freediver days, this is an example of how we found it to work. We had a diver who was diving regularly 80 meters length in the pool. And he was looking good, coming up at 80 meters, looking good. He'd do 100 meters, he blacked out. And we weren't sure what was going on. And we were working with him, and we even got to the point where we had his blood tested to see if he was anemic. No matter what we did, we couldn't get him to budge past this 80 meters. Now this was, we were teaching at this point in time that a person comes up and does the compression type breathing. And we went, something's not quite right here. Well, we had another diver pop in and train with us. And he had to look at this guy's dive, and this guy did another one, and he came up and he struggled. Once again, he had an hypoxic incident. And this diver who was training with us, his name was Phil, he just said to us, I think he needs to do his hook breathing a bit better. He needs to really push it. And so we thought, well, okay, nothing else seems to have worked. And the guy's got everything else going. So we had all our safeties put in there. And we said, okay, this time when you come up, we want you to smash in your hook breaths. And this is pretty much what we said to him. And he came up and he came up on the edge, put his chin on his arms, and he really worked the hook breaths hard. And he came through. At that point, we were doing them, but we realized that the value of them was really more than we realized ourselves. And so we started putting this in as a normal, everyday thing in Sydney Freedivers. And wherever myself and Ant have gone and we've taught freedivers, we've always made sure that they learnt and drilled this compression breathing. And let's going to have a look at this. And we'll have a look at what we do. Now, let me just say, there are many different ways of looking at the same problem, and there are many different ways to skin a cat. You know what they say? So this is not the only way, but this is the way that we have found to work. You know, and pretty regularly with all the divers that we have sort of put together, we've found this works time and time again. Okay, so let's have a look at it. Now, first of all, we want to establish that it increases your oxygen levels in your blood by adding pressure to your lungs. And we find in running, just running, where we don't have any dire need for oxygen, we purse our lips and add pressure to the air in our lungs. Okay, so going further from this, we're going to have a look at how we can do this in freediving to increase that pressure, to make the oxygen exchange work so that more oxygen is put into the blood at that time when we need it, and to also recover any loss of blood pressure. Now, why would we need to recover loss of blood pressure? So there's a couple of things here. One, we're doing a whole event. We're talking pull here in horizontal position, and we're back, and we're putting the body through some severe physical work, and we're getting it down to where the body's oxygen is low. Okay, and then we go boom. Get the story? Now, how many of you have experienced standing up and feeling a little bit dizzy? All that is the blood pressure. The blood drains down, and you go whoop, blood drains down, and you go whoa, okay, yeah, here we go. All right, that's the blood pressure side of it. Now, if you add a draining of blood from the head to the fact that the blood's got low oxygen in it, you are seeing a recipe for a hypoxic incident. So what we do is when we come up, we want to increase the blood pressure. So this, in the fighter pilot days, there are videos of them showing a person going under this high gravity situation and they're blacking out. And then it shows you how when they do a hook breathe, it doesn't black out. So we've seen it. So we know that increasing that pressure in the blood will increase your blood pressure to the head, and you've got less likely chance of blacking out because of low blood pressure to the head. Okay? All right. Second thing is, of course, we're looking at the the oxygen exchange in the lungs. So let's have a look in the lungs. We've heard that oxygen or any gas will pass from a high pressure area to a lower pressure area. Okay? And so in that instance, we want to make sure that oxygen, which may be low in the bloodstream, so imagine that hand is the bloodstream, and this hand is the lungs. Okay, oxygen's low here. If we add pressure here, the oxygen is going to go that way. It cannot help but go that way. This is osmosis. Okay, and this is what happens in the lungs. You know, oxygen's used here. Have a breath. There's more oxygen in there. It goes from a higher pressure of oxygen to a lower pressure automatically. Okay, all right. So now we've established some basic lines here. We've got two things. The oxygen goes across from a high pressure to a low pressure. So increasing the pressure, as we do in running, is beneficial. And the second one is adding pressure to the air in the lungs and bearing down on it, which we'll cover shortly, does increase the blood pressure and therefore bring about less likelihood of dizziness or hypoxia because of the fact that there's less blood in the head. Okay, let's have a look what we do. Just going to draw a set of lungs. Here we go. That's a lung. That's one side. We'll just say that's from the side. Okay, hips down here, head up here, and the nose. All right, big lung there. All right. Now we go down with a full lung, and when we come up and we get to the surface, the action is breathe out 1/3 of your air. Why don't we breathe out at all? Think about it. We've already got some, we still have some oxygen in here. So there's still oxygen in here and it's still being exchanged because you're still moving, right? You're not blacked out. There's still some oxygen in there. Okay? If you breathe out all of that, there will be no oxygen in there. No oxygen in there means whatever's in the blood's going to come back that way. Remember, high pressure to low pressure, whatever the pressure in the blood will come back that way because there's nothing there. No. Bang. So what we do is we only breathe out 1/3. And then we breathe in and replace that 1/3. So we top it up. So we breathe out 1/3. And replace it again. So what that does is it enriches this whole area here with oxygen, O2. It enriches it without going through a moment of low oxygen. Still maintain relatively high with only 1/3 gone. But 1/3 comes in, it immediately enriches it. So that's the first step. You breathe out. It would sort of look a bit like that. Simple. Breathe out 1/3, and it's not always gonna be 1/3. Some people might want it a bit different. It's something that you can play with, what's comfortable with you. All right. So it's not something that's an absolute hard rule. I'm gonna measure exactly how much I breathe out, and it's not like that. But approximately 1/3. Okay, and then you breathe in, and you fill this up with fresh air. Okay, now that oxygen now is going to enrich the whole area. What you do next is you bear down. You hold that breath and bear down on it. And so you're increasing the pressure in here. Pressure is increased in the lungs by your bearing down on it. So you're bearing down, you're dropping, if anything, dropping your chest down a bit, and you're bringing into play this section here. Okay, and what that does is it pressurizes the air in your lungs. So sealed here, but it could be sealed there if you wanted it, but many of us seal it in our lips. Maybe we like being a little bit quieter about our hook breathing, you know. But we seal it and then we bear down on it. So this pressure added here cannot do anything else but push O2 into the bloodstream. Then we breathe out the third again. By now this is all mixed up. We breathe out that third again. And breathe in straight away, fill it up again. Second breath. Breathe out and breathe in, and now we've got that much fresh air in there, okay? Which once again goes down into here, further enriching the air in the lungs. Once again, you compress it, okay? And that forces that oxygen into the bloodstream. Then you do it a third time. You breathe out. Lovely green here. This third here. Breathe it out and then suck it in again. 3 breaths minimum is what we found works. At that point, you bear down on it again. It will look something like that. Everyone looks a bit different. And I'm probably going to look very different in the water because I will have my elbows on the side of the pool. I will have my head tucked on here just in case I do have a samba. And I haven't, but I am always prepared. There, hooked on there, and then I go through those hook breaths in that state. Each time, increasing the oxygen. Third time, you could possibly do it if you were worried or you found it was suitable, because you've got to do this over and over again and get used to doing this. Third time might be fine for you. At that point, you have done immediate things to increase the blood in the bloodstream. You've already got oxygen-enriched blood going towards the head. Allow about 8 to 10 seconds or a bit more for that blood to go from your lungs through to your head. So there's plenty of time for you to come up and be very close in a freediving competition. For you to be close, you come up and you nail these hook breaths within a second or two. There's plenty of time for that blood to get to the head and for you to finish your surface protocol and not black out and not have a samba and be able to do it, you know, lucidly and not mess it up because you're not under control. Okay. Very important that it's practiced, because if you don't practice it when it comes to doing it in a competition or when you really need it, you won't do it. You're already gone. You're out of it. But when you practice it and practice it and practice, it's just like your service protocol. You know, don't expect that you don't do service protocol while you're training night after night. You don't do service protocol seriously. Don't expect on a competition to come up and you're going to go through it perfectly. When you are the closest you'll ever be to blackout, the closest. Don't think it's just going to happen if you don't drill it. So this is the same with your compression breathing. You must drill it. Okay? And this is how you find what suits you best. Okay? So generally after you've done your 3 compression breaths, just some fast deep breathing. And now you've got some oxygen going to the head, but now you're really oxygen. It's just pouring it into your bloodstream. And you've still got plenty of time to go through your surface protocol. Now, in the spear fishing situation, if you found yourself in danger of staying down too long and you came up and you did some compression breaths, you are more likely to not have a hypoxic incident, therefore safer than you would if you didn't know this or you didn't do this. So, practice them. Practice getting a third out. You can do it a little bit at a time. Third out. Back in again. Just a third, right? And you can get what's more than that. There's 100%. Now, do not ever be tempted to come up and get rid of all your oxygen. That's all your breath. That is sure way to black out. Okay, so that's doing the opposite. That's having the blood go from from the bloodstream back into your lungs because there's lower pressure there. It'll go that way. So do it the other way around. Increase this pressure here, push it into the bloodstream. Okay, now I want to start seeing this happen in the pool, particularly if you're doing 50 meters, even if you do it just, if you're on the rope, come up on the rope. Okay? You've got to start working with this stuff so that you get used to doing it. Okay, compression breathing. Let's do it. Cheers. See you in the pool.